Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks provides unique mentoring opportunities to enhance your modeling skills by connecting with talented modelers and manufacturers from around the globe who generously share their knowledge and artistic expertise. Build your confidence, refine modeling techniques, and share your projects with a supportive community of fellow modelers, all while enjoying the world's most rewarding hobby. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom and YouTube for our free live program. Missed a program? No problem. Individual show segments are uploaded to YouTube for convenient on-demand viewing. Be sure to connect with the New Tracks community by joining the New Tracks Facebook page, where you can interact with other modelers and see what they are modeling. Visit our website at www.newtracksmodeling.com, where you'll find information about upcoming events and the latest issue of our monthly newsletter, Observations. And now, here is the host of New Tracks Modeling, Tom Farrell.
Good evening, and welcome to New Tracks Modeling, coming to you live on Zoom and YouTube, as we do every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're glad you're joining us this evening. Tonight's broadcast is part of a growing platform founded by Jim Kello, whose vision was to create a collaborative educational space where modelers of all experience levels could come together to learn, share, and grow. That mission lives on through our strong mentorship community, where experienced hobbyists help others elevate their skills and confidence in model railroading. New Tracks Modeling extends beyond this live program. We're proud to support an active Facebook group, a dedicated website, and the widely read Observations newsletter, which now reaches over 8,000 subscribers. We're also excited to continue growing the New Tracks Modeling Scholarship, an initiative you'll learn more about later in the show. Everything we offer is free to participants, powered entirely by a team of volunteers committed to enriching the hobby of model railroading. Before we begin tonight's lineup, we'd like to thank our sponsor of the show, Brennan's Model Railroading.
Tonight's New Tracks Modeling Meetup is sponsored by Brennan's Model Railroading. For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products focused on the O-scale market. Their flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. The prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, Brennan's has developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Brennan's also has craftsman kits that anyone can build. The complete photographically illustrated instructions assume you've never done this before, and explain in step-by-step detail how to create an outstanding model. The Frank Ellison Tribute series of kits are amazing additions to any layout. These kits take Frank Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level using modern methods and materials with Dennis Brennan's additional details and amazing instructions. See the complete line of products on the Brennan's Model Railroading website. Use the QR code to visit.
I encourage you to support our sponsor, Brennan's Model Railroading. He has a new kit coming out this summer, Garfield Electrical Substation. You'll see that kit highlighted in our new magazine coming out in June, New Tracks Modeler. Now let's take a look at what's ahead for this evening's program. I'm pleased to report that Thomas Yorke, the one and only, is going to do part 2. He's going to show some locomotives he's made in GN15. These are some outstanding modelers from one of the world's best modeler. Next, after that, we're going to have Joel Weber, a little updated electronics for high rail S gauge, going from basic controls to next level controls. And then this evening we have the MyBuild, one of our most popular programs, hosted by Coarse. And if there's time, I will give you a demonstration on applying artificial intelligence for Billboard graphics. Before we get rolling, we'd like to highlight our New Tracks Modeling Scholarship Program. Here's a brief video and then a few words from this.
A Are you a model railroader going to college in academic year 2025-26? If you are pursuing a STEAM degree, apply for the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship. For the 2025-26 academic year, 3 $2,000 scholarships will be available. You can apply online at the QR code shown or on the New Tracks Modeling website. Model railroaders can support the New Tracks Modeling Mentoring Scholarship, the only national scholarships for model railroaders from a nonprofit organization. Donate online on Zephy. All donations are tax deductible.
Bob, why don't you tell us a little about the status of the New Tracks Modeling Scholarship?
Okay, Tom, I will. We've got a couple weeks left in our application window. We currently have, I believe, 5, and we know of at least 2 others that are coming in. So please, it's kind of the last chance for young folks as they finish up their exams and things like that at school to get their applications in for the scholarship. Once again, we are offering 3 $2,000 scholarships. So that's a nice little chunk of change. I want to thank folks. In the past several weeks, we have received some very nice donations, and we appreciate that. And I'd also like to announce tonight that Henry Primus, for those of you who've been on the show for a while, Hank used to do a little segment every week, and Hank will be joining the scholarship committee. And we welcome him, and we'll have more news on his involvement in the future. He's been a real advocate for the scholarship. As Tom always says, and Jim before him has always said, this is more than just about giving money to kids. This is about the future of our hobby. We have got to support these kids and keep them involved in model railroading while they're going to school. I know I gave it up when I went away. So many of us, you get distracted for those years with some good things and some bad things. But the New Tracks Scholarship is a way to remind these young men and women that there's a community out here that supports them and that we need them. And, more and more of these segments on the show are dealing with technology. And so much of this technology is coming from these young people. So please, if you can, make a donation. It's fully tax deductible for you. We do not get charged any fees if you make your donation online on Zephy. We've saved probably $500 over the past 3 years by using Zephy. If you'd rather write a check, the address is up on the website. So go to newtracksmodeling.com/scholarship, and you can see the application. You can learn more about the scholarship, and you can make a gift. And gifts now can be made in honor of or in memory of folks. So you have a way to honor some folks as you help save our hobby and promote the hobby and help these young men and women. So thank you. And we'll be back in June. Hopefully by the end of June, we'll be letting you know who our recipients are for this year. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Bob. Well said. And as Bob said, I encourage all our viewers to make a donation. Go to our website. You'll find the links to make your fully tax-deductible donation. Well, I'd like to start the show now. First up, we have Thomas Yorke. He was last on the show in March, showing some of his GN15 structures. This evening, we're going to have his locomotives. Is Thomas on the show here? No.
I don't see anybody showing up right now.
Well, let's jump to Joel Weber. Joel, you on? There he is. Unmute yourself.
Yes, there we go.
Okay, and Phil has your PowerPoint. We have the latest update. You sent me one this evening.
Okay, yeah, I read it and I thought, what the hell was I thinking? You know, as I get older, my fingers get more dyslexic.
So welcome to the show, and we'll run a video after your presentation on the on who's supporting your segment. But let's start.
Go for it. So
Tell us what you're going to talk about.
You're going to put the presentation up, right?
Yes, sir. Here
Okay. Yeah, this is a couple months back. I talked about some control systems that I use. One is Legacy. One is Flyer Chief, which is another Lionel control system. And I also use something called Locomatic. Now, when I go ahead and flip to the next screen, if you would, please. And so I've just to give you a little background on this, this is a kind of a long view picture of my layout. I've got 2 levels. I've got 2 tracks per level. And frankly, my initial priority was to get all 4 tracks running. I've got grandchildren. They don't want to see about scenery and going and building going. They want to see trains running. So I wanted to get all 4 tracks running. The funny thing is my grandson was about 2 when he first was introduced to this. And with 2 tracks running, he was amazed. The day he came over and I had the next level running and there was 4 trains running, he was blown away. He didn't know which way to look. So again, that was my initial focus, but my desire was always to upgrade and take it to another level, but I just needed to get started. So go ahead and flip the screen, please. A little more, in addition to that, what you saw is alongside that long wall, I've also added a yard. So on the other side of the mountain that I'm building, so I've got a place to sort out cars and just display things. It's connected to the outer loop of the lower level, enters from 2 different directions. It's mostly for play and show, but you know, the fact is, it is actually a workable yard. You could take trains out of the yard, go out into the main, cross into the inner loop, and I've got multiple sidings where cars could be dropped off and picked up. So it is technically a working layout. Next screen, please. Powered, I've got 2 MTH Z4000s. I've been running Flyer power, much like American Flyer or power transformers, much like old Lionel ones. They've been around forever. They run forever. But I wanted something with better electronics inside in terms of circuit breakers and protection and that sort of thing. Plus, these have a little more boost to them in terms of amperage. I am running a Flyer 30B, and it turns out that the accessory post on the 4000s only runs 14 amps, and that won't push Flyer accessories well. So I set up the Flyer power pack and have the accessories powered off of that so I can give them full power. The Legacy device is kind of on there on the right. You see part of it. That's just the base station. And in front, I have S-Helper Locomatic controls. I have a handful of their locomotives. These are Dally controls, and they're like taking conventional and just taking it to the next level, but you're still running the track, not the train. But they are nice and they're fun. And my granddaughter, who's 7, loves punching the buttons on those and running the trains with those. So I was very glad that I stuck those in there. Go ahead to the next screen, please. While we're waiting for that, on the lower level, yeah, can we advance the screen? Can you guys still hear me? Okay, there we are. Thank you. I wasn't sure if I'd gotten disconnected. Sometimes my computer likes to throw me a curve. I've got 2 places on the lower level where the outer track and the inner track connect. On the left, you see an inline connection, which is behind the trestle. And that, of course, doesn't present any electric issues because they're running in the same direction. On the right, I've got what I call the Y curve, where I can go straight or I can turn. That connection from the outer to the lower does require a polarity change. So that was one of the things that I was facing in putting this together, because you've built your layout where the space fits. One more screen, please. On the other end of the lower level, I've got my yard connection, and as you can see, the connection coming out of the tunnel, and off to the left, which you can't see, there's a bridge that goes through the walkway. So the main line comes around and curves through, but I can go into the yard from two different directions, which of course itself provides two different challenges. Not insurmountable, but that's what we work with. My goal, of course, in my initial design, I was originally going to take the outer loop of the lower level and make that reversing. And I thought, wait a minute, it's really the base case. So I decided to make the inner track of the main layout a reversed area and the yard a reversed area, so that the outer loop is static and always stays the same. If you'll switch screens, please. So what I did is I got into it. I set a panel above my controllers, and of the 4 posts left to right, they're marked A, B, C, and D. So as I said, the B loop, which is the outer loop of the lower level, is a static loop. It gets its power from the B post, period, always, forever, no changing. The inner loop, the A, gets its power from the A unless I decide to bring trains in from the outer loop. And so the A-B switch on the left is a dual pole, dual throw switch where, in essence, I'm either going to take the power from the A post or I'm going to take it from the B post. Now, because of the 2 connection points, the second post, and I've labeled them crossover and Y-turn, and I labeled them that instead of east and west or north and south or right. I wanted it to be very clear for anybody using the layout what's going where. So for my reverse loop, crossover, of course, is a straight inline connection, power to power, base to base. Y-turn is my reverse loop, because if I come into the inner loop that way, I need to throw the reverse loop at it. And so it's easy to do, easy to conceive, and simple. You know, it's funny, I had a layout in Naperville where I had, and I did this here as well, I've got removable bridges, and I've got the power in the bridge. The power comes from one side and the ground comes from the other. And when you take the bridge out, that segment of track is dead. And I put that in so that anybody using my layout couldn't run a locomotive into the abyss. Well, the person it always saved was me, because I would come downstairs and I would not put the bridge back in, and I would start a train and it would go around the track and then it would stop. And I go, why did it stop? And I realized I hadn't put the bridge in. So the person I really protected was myself. Well, the same thing here with these connections, because they're very simply labeled. I don't have to remember which is which. It describes it as opposed to east and west or right and left. I know what's what. Now, the upper level, I've got a locomatic on each of the 2 posts down low, A and B. On the upper level, I only have it connected to the inner track, but I may want to run it on the outer track. So what I did up on the top, I don't have any reason for a reverse loop, but I may want to run the C post to the outer track and the D post to the inner track. And so I've got them simply switched where it's one terminal or one post or the other going to that track. I also have 2 pair of crossover switches on the one long wall, so I can take a train from outer to inner or inner to outer. And when I do that, I simply need to put both tracks on the same power. I can put them both on C or both on D, but when I want to do a crossover, I simply push them in the same direction. So it allows me a lot of flexibility about which system I use, what train goes where, and it's simple enough that I don't forget, and simple enough that anybody who has any kind of knowledge of running any kind of a train layout would look at this and could figure it out pretty quickly. Next screen, please. I did something similar in the yard, and I did this with my yard in my previous layout. The left post has main or local, and you see I've got a transformer underneath there. Main simply means I'm going to bring the train in from the main line, and the yard is going to be connected to that. And I can take a train from the yard, go all the way out on the outer loop, move to the inner loop, and again, do a switching run. If I want to work a train or play with a locomotive there in the yard, I can switch it to local, which severs it from the main line. The one on the right is my reverse switch. Tunnel comes in from the tunnel, as you saw in the previous picture. That one is in essence a straight line connection to the layout. The power and the ground are the same. If I come from the bridge direction, it reverses loop to come into the yard. So I simply need to flip that down if I'm coming in from that direction. Labeling it this way keeps it simple, keeps it clean, keeps it clear for anybody who's using the layout. And so I've got a lot of options, a lot of flexibility in how I run the layout, which, I did a lot of this stuff on my layout in Naperville, set a reverse loop to get into the yard from a different area, all this stuff, automatic uncouplers at both ends of the yard, and then never actually used them. But they all worked. So if I had ever finished that layout completely and really was focused on doing that, I had the option. I've got to get all this wiring in before I put in trees and ballasting and all this sort of stuff. Because once you got that in, as you all know, it's kind of late to do any wiring changes. So I want to make sure this all worked before I went to the final level. So that's basically what I've done. You can flip to the next screen, which is just really the closing screen. That's what I've done. This is what I always intended to do when I started. But as I said in the beginning, I just needed to get 4 trains running so I could amaze my grandchildren and anybody else who visited. And now I can run the thing the way it was meant to be run. Questions from anybody?
Joel, are you all done with all the electrics now?
Pretty much.
Are you still playing with them?
It's done. I also put in circuit breakers on the 4 main lines because everybody kept saying when you're running these newer electronic locomotives, you need to protect them, and I always intended to. So as part of this, I put those in on every line. So that's all installed. They come, they're Lionels, and the building is really more of an O-scale building. And on the lower level, I put them visible on the layout. But for the upper level, one, I didn't have a good place I wanted to put them. And secondly, I didn't really want to look at them. So they're actually mounted under the layout. I can see them if I need to. And it's funny, when I throw a post on, I can hear the circuit breaker click in. So I know it's working. But I made sure that I incorporated that as a part of it so that presumably all the electric is behind me. And now I can finish painting my mountains and adding trees and just getting in. I never actually finished my layout in Naperville. I got involved in some other hobbies. This one I am going to finish.
Well, see, I couldn't wait to finish all of that electrical stuff so that I could get on to the landscaping, the putting buildings in place and all that kind of stuff. You sound like you had more fun with your electrics.
Well, fun is a challenging word. I mean, I had some, I actually have one accessory that was tripping my circuit breakers. Even when it wasn't even connected to the 2 MTHs. It was only connected to the Flyer 30B. But it only that accessory. When I isolated it, I put an extension cord on it and ran it into the plug in the bathroom, and then it behaved. So it's now isolated on its own very small transformer because it's my grandkids and my wife's favorite accessory. But it causes the circuit breakers to trip, which causes the trains to flip the reverse unit. So I had to get it out of the line. So there was some frustration with that.
Well, you have to keep the family happy.
It's because a big part of it with the kids is with the accessories is they can walk in and they can push buttons and things happen. And that's part of the magic for them. But it is fun to watch my grandkids get involved in the running of the trains. And when my grandson, who I think will stick with it longer, he realized one day, he's like 3, he looked at the totes underneath the layout and goes, Pop, are those all trains too? And realizing that all these totes were full of trains. And I've actually let him help me set up a train. And he picked out what I stuck on the layout. And as he gets older, I'm going to let him take over. So I'm looking forward to those days.
That's how to
Joel,
get hooked.
I have a question for you, Joel.
Okay.
Could you put the first picture up of your layout?
Phil,
Go all the way back to the first screen.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Go to the next screen. Next screen, please. There we go. There we go. That's the main layout.
I noticed that your switches look like they are American Flyer, but your track is not Flyer track, is it?
Okay, here's what I've got. Since you were asking a very pointed question, I am using Flyer switches on the lower level, and the upper track is American Models track. I had two pair of American Model switches. The lower track is S Helper Flex Track, because S Helper has a pin that will connect their Flex Track to Flyer switches. And Flyer switches, in fact, if you show my yard, let's go ahead and advance one more screen. One more screen. No, let's go back a couple. One more. There. In the yard, if you look a little to the center and the right, I took some manual switches and just chopped the hell out of them, shrinking them down. So in the space of what 2 traditional Flyer switches might support, I've got 4. And they're all run manually because I can reach them. Trying to put electronic controls on them was way more aggravation than I was willing to endure. And since I can reach them and throw the frog whichever direction I want to, I just wanted as many lanes in that area as I could. But yeah, I'm using Flyer switches all around the lower level.
Okay. There's no problem on the matchup?
None. There's a pin. The coupler has a pin on one end to go on the Flyer track, and a piece that goes around the bottom of the rail on the S Helper Flex on the other side, and it just pins together.
Okay.
And the reason I picked S Helper Flex Track for the bottom is so that I could use Flyer switches and save myself a bunch of money and a bunch of aggravation.
Now, did you consider on your control panel where you have your alphabet A and B? For your grandson, who's 3 years old, it's going to be probably 3 years before he's going to be able to recognize the letters.
Oh no, he's 4 years old now, and he already can spell his name.
Oh, because I was going to suggest maybe using colors.
No, I did colors on my previous layout where I had some really funky wiring setups. I did use colors for the posts. He's fine. I appreciate where you're coming from, but he already recognizes most of his letters, and he's a pretty smart kid.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Joel. Appreciate you doing your presentation this evening, and we look forward to doing another one as the layout progresses.
Yeah, I've got some other things I've been thinking about, so I'll be back.
Terrific. Thank you again. I believe I see Tom Yorke. Is that correct? Tom? Hello? Thomas Yorke. Elvis has left the building.
His layout's here.
Well, here he is.
He's muted.
There we go.
Okay, now you got sound?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was just getting my meal.
Well, welcome. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you and see your modeling. And part 1 of Tom Yorke we had back in March, where he showed us his G-scale structures. Part 2 this evening is scratch-built locomotives. I've seen these photographs. They're simply amazing. Part 3, hopefully next week, will be the rolling stock. So the man who needs no introduction, Thomas Yorke, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, let me see. Are you going to be able to run the slides?
They're running now.
Okay. Okay, we can.
Can you see him?
Yeah, I've just got the introduction.
Yeah, so there's her first slide. You see it?
Okay. That is a diesel that was built in China for a Taiwan mining railroad. And that's a tiny little diesel engine. It runs on, I think it runs on a spud. I don't remember. It's all scratch built, and it was a kit that I produced years ago. I produced everything but the cab, because the cab is just styrene pieces. And it was made to look the way the original one looked, which was really ratty. Okay, that's one of my favorite locomotives. It's a Burton Machine Company locomotive, which is basically a copy of a Plymouth. It's one of the very early units. This was all scratch built, and it is a kit. If you notice, there's planks underneath the pilots. That's to keep it from wandering if it derails. But everything on here is scratch built, except for the figure. And that's my coupling. I use chain couplings. That little guy is on a spud. It's a copy of a Russian tractor. It's totally scratch built, except for it uses a Model A engine from I guess a Revell kit. And the only other thing that's, let's see, besides the spud and the engine, the seat and the chain is a Grantline chain. But this one runs fast. Unfortunately, it's a speed demon. And that shows the size of a figure. Okay, this was the first steamer I built. This was from a Bachmann 260, ON30. I took everything but the frame off. I built a frame extension and new pilots, new deck. The only thing that sticks out under the boiler is the big weight that the motor sits on.
Tell us how you do the weathering on the side of that. What's the technique there, Tom?
Let's see. Okay. First of all, the locomotive is painted brown, entirely brown, except for the cab, which was gray. And then I put some of the I used thin stain, several thin browns, and rust color stains. And these are very thin. I just float them on and let them dry. They just sort of wander around, and you let them dry. And then I hit it with dry pigment. And then I paint the rest of the green.
That's all hand painted?
Yeah. Well, the tank wasn't. The tank was sprayed, but I worked backwards on that one. But the pilot is a piece of styrene, and the cylinders are wrapped with air conditioning tape and chewed up. And the only thing that's not scratch built on are the coupler pockets and the steps, which are Ozark miniatures. And the tank is very thin brass. And after that was all soldered together, I took my pliers and mashed it up.
Did you consciously leave the wheel drivers cleaner looking?
Yes, those should be weathered. They really shouldn't be white walled.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
No, that detracts from it somewhat. I mean, there's a few details that are needed yet. There's a sand sand puller and the sanding valve needs to be put on. There's a few little things that have to go yet, but as usual, I start the next project before before I finish. And all of the interior is scratch built. That little guy was a kit. This was from, I'd forgotten the railroad. I made it a lot narrower than it is supposed to be because mine's 15-inch gauge. But everything is mine on it except for the engine, which is from Wiseman, which is O scale. And everything else is pretty much resin on it, except for the boards that are holding the lumber back, and of course the posts. And that's a plaster, a resin cast boiler and water tank and toolbox. And it's basically all painted by hand. This one is Bachmann ON30 Davenport, which has a whole new hood and a whole new top body. But the frame is totally ON30 Davenport. And I wish I could still get those figures, but I can't anymore. They were done by Iceman, and I bought 5 of them, and I wish I bought more. But they're discontinued. But this is all resin, resin body. The only thing that's commercial on it is the seat, which was a 3D part. Okay, this is a kit I've got coming out soon. This is powered by the Bachmann ON30 streetcar. Let's see. It's about maybe a 15 to 20 ton Brookville, and it's all resin cab and resin motor and frame and all.
Will these be released through Frenchman River or no?
Yeah, that is probably going to be released in about a month.
Okay.
And this one is a tongue-in-cheek one. This one is built on another Bachmann Davenport, the little 040. And everything on this is scratch built except for the figure, which is I'm not sure where the figure is from. I think it might be Jimmy Flintstone. I'm not sure. The piping is all styrene, but everything else is pretty much resin.
How long does one of these typically take you to make? For example, what was the time frame to make this one?
After it's designed, probably about 2 weeks.
When you say resin, so you're making a mold and cast?
Yeah, patterns and then mold. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, styrene patterns go pretty quickly. Much faster than brass.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, those locomotives weren't really for the Grand Barbosa, but this locomotive is. This is the new paint job, the new color scheme for the Grand Barbosa Railway, the sugar plantation line. This is a copy of a German locomotive. It runs on a Bachmann frame. I've forgotten it's a European locomotive. It's a 6-wheel outside connected engine, which is about $150, I think. I just took the superstructure off and built a new one out of styrene. And you can see the weld lines on the back of the cab. Yeah, that one, it's supposed to be sort of a Gemeinde, which is a German locomotive.
It looks German.
Okay, that one's number 6. That one's built on the same frame. This one has a brass roof, so I bashed it up somewhat. And since it's open, I had to put a driver in it. It looked kind of silly running around without a driver.
What was the technique to get the weld? What are you doing there to get the weld?
The welds are a little bit gross, but they wouldn't show if they were any less, I think. I use a tiny sliver of about, maybe 10 thousandths styrene, a little square, which I glue on, and then I soak it with plastic weld, and I take an X-Acto point and I mash it down.
Wow, that's a good tip. How'd you do the louvers on this?
The which?
The louvers on the side of the
Oh.
panel.
The louvers were done with styrene. I made one panel. And I cast all of them from that one pattern.
Okay.
I wasn't going to make, I think, I don't know what it is, 60 rivet or louvers.
And the radiator on that one looks complicated. Where'd that come from?
The radiator is a piece of wire mesh. It's all styrene, but the wire mesh is. This one is number 7. This one uses a different Bachmann frame. This one is a 6-wheel, but it has it's coupled to the front. There's a little it actually almost looks like 8-wheel drive, but it's not. That's a crank on the front. And a little box on the front. The engine is backwards. And the louvered area is where the gearing is. And it works the gear below. And this one hasn't been, this is the old scheme. It hasn't been painted, the new one, and it never will be. It will remain old. As you're looking at the next one, let me grab my dinner. I'll be right back.
Feel free to ask him questions on how he did things. Kind of odd, we're taking a dinner break.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, that one's number 8. That one is from a Bachmann steamer. So this is the other steamer built into a diesel. And again, it's all styrene above the frame.
That's the Bachmann Mogul in disguise.
Yeah,
here?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. Made into an 060. Okay. This was the first version of the Brookville that I did. This was done probably about 20 years ago. And it uses a Model A engine. But I've got a tractor engine for the new one now. But it's basically the same kit. Okay, this one, the frame is packed away, so I couldn't put it on its frame. The frame is an Athearn HOSW diesel. What I did was I had to modify the frame a little bit. I put 40-inch HO 40-inch wheels on it, and I raised the frame by about 1/8 of an inch by putting spacers between the bolsters and the frame. So this raises the frame about 3/16 of an inch, and it looks much better. It's not so squat. But it's a plastic tube. Everything else, the frame and all the other parts are cast resin. The only part that, let me see, well, the valve handles, of course, aren't mine. And one of the controls in the cab is not mine. Usually I don't mess with making whistles either. Okay, that's the front of the number 8. The gas tank on the roof, and the radiator in the front there. And that's the Brookville. Okay, this is a new one that I'm working on. This will be out in about a month. It's a climax, sort of. It is, let's see, it's a 3D 2-cylinder engine, which is from another manufacturer. And when I saw that, I figured I've got to make a climax out of it. And that engine itself was only $15. And that's a figure by Farrell, which I had to break the arms on and redo because they were straight down. Let's see, it's all resin frame. I couldn't find a headlight, so I had to manufacture a headlight. And the boiler and the water tank are going to be resin castings. And the stack, believe it or not, is from a Lionel locomotive. Now I'm only going to do 4 kits and 2 built. This built one is mine, and 2 of the kits are already sold. So I've got 1 built one and 2 kits left. Okay, this is the first vertical boiler locomotive that I did. This one was a real fun one. It's got a resin frame. It's a plaster boiler. Let me see. It uses very thin brass sheeting on it, which was then blackened and then highlighted with dry pigment. And it's homemade roofing.
How do you do the rivets on the side panels?
Punch.
Okay.
And it's let's see, that's a wood cab frame, but the frame of the locomotive is resin, and the fuel compartment is formed brass and then banged up quite a bit. And this is a Bachmann drive, the trolley drive.
This is my favorite of the group.
I love this one.
I mean, look at that thing. Talk about they just think something together and make a locomotive. Yeah.
Well, it's sort of reminiscent of Australian and New Zealand uh, motive power. This one is yet to be done. The frame is resin. The automotive frame is styrene, and the engine and radiator are Revell, and the body is a 29 Ford pickup. It's got rust put on it, which is basically spackling compound. And once it's semi-dry, I chew it up a little bit with a X-Acto.
Next slide.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the back of it. Yeah. That'll have a gas tank back there. It's one of my favorite AMT or Revell kits. Is a 29 Ford pickup. It's so useful.
I like that so much, I put it at the end again. So, does our Zoom audience have any questions for Tom Yorke?
Hey, Tom, Steve Sherrill, how you doing today? I got a question on your track. Are you using any of the ON30 track and taking the ties and spreading them wider or anything like that?
Yes.
Or
That's what I use. However you pronounce it, Pico or Pico track.
Yeah.
And I cut a few ties out, but I have to cut all the ties apart, and then I double space them, and then I double them up, and then.
Okay, they're not longer or anything. You don't add any length to them. Okay.
No. Most European track wasn't like American narrow gauge where it's really long. It's very short.
Yeah.
I like longer, but yeah. I've hand laid track before. I've been there and done that, and I just
I certainly understand
enough.
Oh.
What do you prefer working on, Tom? Structures, locomotives, or rolling stock? Do you have a preference?
Yes. I don't know. I mean, my basis is really architecture, so structures sort of go along with that, and a lot of the work I did for Disney was architectural. So I mean,
I would say that follows through to your engine prototype work a lot. They have a very architectural feel to them. Pretty cool. As another architect speaking here, so.
Well, I'm not an architect, but I took about three and a half years of architecture in college before
It shows.
to commercial art, but
yeah,
I know my way around architecture. And of course locomotives are they're just fun to do, especially large scale.
And you have a new kit that's coming out with Frenchman River, which will eventually feature on the show. Cherokee, that's new
Cherokee,
this time.
Yeah, Cherokee Parts Store.
Yeah. And looking forward to that one.
And I mean, This is the new one I'm working on.
Oh yeah, another new one. Yeah,
If it'll,
it's tough with the background on.
yeah.
Well, we'll feature that in a upcoming show. Well, Tom, it's always an honor to have you on, and spectacular modeling. And I think we're going to see you next week with the rolling stock.
Yeah,
Part three
I'll
of
have a couple more locomotives that didn't make it this time, but
yeah, principally it'll be rolling stock, and
yeah.
so I want to thank you for being on the show this evening, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Okay. Next, we're going to have the MyBuild with Chris Coarse, if he's on, or Greg Cassidy, or both of them. But first, we're going to run our New Tracks Facebook video.
Does it seem like eternity waiting for the next Wednesday night and a New Tracks event? Now there is hope. The New Tracks Modeling Facebook page gets you into the New Tracks community 24/7. Post, respond, and converse with over 1,200 avid model railroaders on Facebook. Show your modeling, ask questions, and help others. Join now, it is free and easy. Use the link or QR code to open the Facebook page.
Okay, and next is the MyBuild, and not sure if Chris Coarse is here yet, or do we go to Greg Cassidy?
Yeah, I don't think he's shown up. I have not seen him, so you're stuck with me.
Welcome to the show. It's great
All
to
right.
be doing this.
Here we go. Okay, so I'm afraid Chris had another commitment tonight. I will get us through this. So it is me, Greg Cassidy, and we have 5 presenters tonight, and some of them have quite a few number of slides. So I'll just start through it. This particular MyBuild is a free-for-all, so anything goes on this one. And as luck would have it, I'm the first up. It's all alphabetical. I had nothing to do with it. What I wanted to show tonight was a few tips of tricks that I used in building my abandoned building. It got a lot of interest in how it came out, and most of them were really easy. It's just sort of thinking differently than what you would if you're building a normal structure. So I'll go through a few of those tips and techniques. I picked up both of these at the show for $15, and I had built the Superior the way it was supposed to be built. But the Weekly Herald, I wanted to build as an abandoned building. One of the first things that I was thinking of was I wanted a couple of the windows bricked over. You can get ordinary brick basswood sheets that are usually 1/16 thick, but for these windows, that would have made it stick out unprototypically. Monster Model Works makes some 1/32 inch brick sheet, and I had some of that, so I just cut a couple pieces of that, and it fit right in the windows. And this is testing how it fits. I ended up only using one, but it fit in there quite nicely. For the windows that came in the kit, I wanted them to look like they were old iron that had been rusty, so I started by spraying them with a rust color. And then I just used my sponge in a couple different shades of very thin gray paint to go over the windows and sponge on what would be the color that is sort of underneath the rust. And then a lot of my windows were going to be broken glass. So I took a scalpel to the pieces of acetate that I cut out and just made a whole lot of shapes of broken glass. I looked at a few pictures to get inspired. And for some of the window frames, I wanted them to be completely busted out. So I broke the actual frames and cut out little pieces of the acetate and then glued them in place. And this is what the broken windows and broken glass look like when I put them in the door. And with the scalpel, when you're working with really thin acetate, it actually can cut pieces out quite easily. And a couple of my broken windows were only meant to be cracked, but they ended up being completely broken. So that gave me more parts to work with. Now, the front part of my building was going to have a wooden floor in it, but I didn't want it to be raised compared with the rest of the concrete floor any more than would be prototypical. So instead of just using some scribed 1/8 or 1/16 inch basswood, I used some 1/64 aircraft plywood and just scribed it myself. Now, it was very thin, so when I went to stain it, it wasn't in place yet, but I just clipped it to a piece of 1/4 inch strip wood and put the stain on, and that kept it straight while it dried, and then it was easy enough to glue in place when I was ready to. Another tip that I've used a couple times in the past, I was painting the stonework on this, and even in HO, if you're using a chalk paint or a terracotta paint, you get a slight bit of texture more than you do with just ordinary craft paints or hobby paints. And so using those to paint all of my rock work gave them a little more texture. And the larger scale you're working in, the more you can notice that texture. I also used a wet palette so that I could get even more shades by mixing some of the paints. And to make my dirty windows, this is something I've been doing for years. Once I have the glass in place, and of course, in this case, glass wasn't in place everywhere, but where I had the glass in place, I mix a very, very thin mixture of burnt umber or burnt sienna and water, and then just pool it on and let it dry. And it comes out looking like quite dirty windows, which is what I wanted on this building. Now, one of the products that I like to use, and I'll show you why I was able to use it here. I was going to be building a frame for the awning, but the frame was going to be collapsing and falling down. And I wanted it to be only being held up by the boom that held the derrick. So in order to get everything glued in place correctly, I used some liquid PSA, which is a type of glue that you put on a little bit and let it cure somewhat, and it becomes an adhesive, sort of like on a tape or something. And that way I was able to stick that part of the frame on, and then I could build the collapse portion around the boom, but then it was easy enough to take it off afterwards with no residue or anything. And I like the PSA being used for that. It's also useful in some other procedures. Then the last thing I did was, for gluing broken glass in my skylight, I wanted a lot of just windows missing. So I just cut lots of tiny pieces of the acetate and then just put a drop of super glue and stuck each one on. And it ended up looking like most of the windows were gone and only a few pieces of glass were remaining. And it came out very effective. And this is where I had a pool of water underneath the broken skylight. And so this is how the whole building came out. And some of those little techniques I kind of had to develop as I was working on it. I just said, well, I know the look I want to go after. What do I need to do to achieve it? And most of them worked out. There was a couple techniques that I tried and they didn't work at all, so I'm not going to show you those. But that was the end of my tips and techniques. This is the front of the building. I had used some newspaper printout that I made to cover the windows. And then I had some leftover pieces that just were scattered on the sidewalk. So that's the end of my abandoned building. Are there any questions? All right, we'll move on. I know Jeffrey's here. I saw him log on just a few minutes ago. So
Yes,
Jeff,
I'm
you
here.
ready?
I'm here.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay, this is a quick one tonight. I've been working on adding a work train, and I at one of the narrow gauge shows, I think it was the one up in Harrisburg, I found this very old kit, Pac West, and it was already a model of a box car that had been converted to a work car. And it is truly a box of sticks, though I think it went together pretty nicely. And so here's the work car, painted a mineral red, lettered for the Rio Grande Southern, though it's not an exact prototype, it's close. Notice the kit is very fine. There's separate applied truss rods with the little open clevises on them, the brake gear, the separately applied grab irons every place. All the hardware is separate bits, so it's really quite a nice kit, and I was very happy to add that to my work train. And then I didn't have a static photo, but the next photo shows my work train in the foreground there. And there's the work car on the end, but also you can see two flat cars, and the loads there are based on prototypes, but the bulldozer you may have seen long ago, that's the Tamiya Japanese bulldozer from World War II, reworked to give me a modest sized bulldozer. And then the crane is an old corgi toy, which again happens to fall more or less in the ballpark of scale. It's got a guy in the cab, which I couldn't get out, and it needs some weathering, but it does give me a reasonable size crane, and those are hard to find in O scale. There are not a lot of them out there, and so searching all over, I thought this made a presentable load for my work train, which is just sitting on a siding there.
That's really nice, Jeff. I can tell you how to get those windows dirty so that you can't see him.
Yeah, I was thinking actually that one of the things I might do is, in Al Judy style, is put some tarps over the stuff.
That would work. All right, well, they're very nice. Anybody have any questions for Jeff? We'll let this run to the end again.
Okay, yeah, you've seen that before. That's one of my stock train with the brakeman painted my brake painting technique on the roof of one of the stock cars.
Well, you're going to have to pull your work train out next time you have an operating session to clean up some spillage or something.
Yeah. Well, the railroad actually started doing that to clear snow, and that the rotary snowplow was a bit of a problem even when it still existed. And so they started putting these shovel and bulldozer on flat cars and hauling them to where they needed to work on the snow. Nice. So this could be the snow train.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Now, the next one up is David Kohler. I didn't see him on a little earlier. David, are you here? Okay, I don't think he's with us, but he does have a little description of this, and I'll tell you, these pictures are incredible. What this is a 1/48 scratch build model of the Milwaukee Road log station at Woodruff, Wisconsin. And I would love to be able to ask him exactly how he built it, if these were all just sticks actually cut to size. But it's a beautiful job he's done here.
Is that oak scale?
1/48, he says.
Yeah, magnificent.
And I don't know if it's going to end up being part of a layout or if he just built it as a standalone diorama. He does seemed like he hauls it around in his pickup based on a future picture, but I could just see, you know, a station being built like this, especially up in Wisconsin. So I don't know if he just put it there for a photo, if he actually takes it to shows or something, but it's certainly a beautiful piece of work. So that's David Kohler. Now, next up, we have Kenneth Myers. And Ken, I saw you on here a little earlier. Are you ready to go?
I believe I am.
All right. Well, I'll let you go through yours. Then just tell me when to move on.
I will do that. This is a picture I captured out of a video on YouTube. The YouTube channel's name is Chandwell, and its creator is Michael Scott. He models in 1/148th scale, which is UKN scale. And I like that building. It just did something for me. And he based that building on a portion of a building in Sheffield, England, which is on the next slide, I believe, called the Spartan Works. And he took just the center portion out of there to create his building. And so I practiced and practiced, and I tried to create a paper and cardstock building in 1/87th HO scale, which I did. And it's on the next slide here is the front of my building. I North Americanized it. On the front, it just simply says low clearance. You can see looking through the building that there are doors and windows through that center section. In the next slide, because I like Michael so much, I named this the Michael Scott Building. And the door in the lower left goes into the Whistle Stop Hobby Shop. And the door in the lower right is a UPS parcel pickup with a little air conditioner there. That strange door in the top involves the history of this building. In the 1920s and the 1930s, it was actually an aircraft manufacturing plant. And they built the wing panels in the upper story because they used aircraft dope for the fabric on the wings to tighten it up. And so they would slide their panels out those doors down onto trucks, and pull the fuselage out of the bottom floor and take it out to the airfield and assemble it and fly it off to their customers. So that's why there's some doors way up where there's nothing. Next slide. Got a little truck coming through the pass-through there. On the back of the building on the left side where the roll-up door is, it says UPS deliveries here on the red signs. There's a little no parking either side arrow on that wall to the right of the truck there. Low clearance once again. And there's a barber shop in the end there. And he's got some customer parking only signs there. And next slide. And they could slide the wing panels out each door. But luckily today, this Model Railroad Club now has the whole top floor to themselves for workshop, for the layout, for everything. And I found the Jersey Valley Railroad sign for a Model Railroad Club, Guernsey. That's Guernsey, I'm sorry. My grandmother worked for Guernsey Dairy in Northville, Michigan back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I had to have Guernsey in there somewhere. And on that sign by the door, it says, open to the public Saturday and Sunday, noon to 2 p.m. So they have it there. Next slide. Now, this is tentatively where it may end up on the layout, and it's right across the street from my Arlo Boutique Hotel with Alice's Restaurant, which I presented on here before, as well as the building where I've got my Ace Hardware. And there's a picture of a couple of my dead rail engines showing part of a reverse loop that goes there, which requires no wiring when you go dead rail. Isn't that right, Steve? Next picture. And this is from the other side, showing the L building, the Arlo Hotel, and my Michael Scott building. And I just am having a ball designing, creating, and building paper and cardstock buildings. It's a lot of fun.
Well, Ken, tell me, I knew you had designed the paperwork yourself. Is it just cardstock they're using for the basis of the building and the paper is glued onto it?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The paper is printed. I use Inkscape to do the designing. That's what Michael uses. I know other people use other things. Each building I come up with a little bit different technique for things. But yeah, the paper is just glued onto the cardstock. And the cardstock is various thicknesses so as to give me the right depth for the window and door inserts. And it's just a lot of fun trying to get better at it and make it look better. I don't light them because I don't. I just don't run my railroad at night. The daytime only short line, it's only 4 miles long. So,
all right. Well, I love the building, and I got to imagine that at least somebody has asked you, is that named after the guy in the office?
What the
Michael Scott?
Yeah, Michael Scott is the guy who has the Chandwell
right
YouTube videos. The man is amazing. He looks to me to be like in his 40s. And he does this stuff, but at 1/148th scale.
Wow.
And how he does some of his stuff, I look at it and I go, I can't believe you have the eyesights nor the patience to do that, because on some days, patience runs a little thin, even in HO. The thing about HO bricks is a real brick face, modern brick face, probably goes back a while. The face of a brick is only 8 inches long by 2¼ inches high. And when you reduce that to HO scale, it gets really small, really fast. And everything else does. The windowsills, the lintels. I finally got on this building, I got my lintels inset into, so it's actually in the wall of a building like many lintels are, because they're actually part of the structure to hold up the rest of the building above the lintel. And I did that by printing the lintel onto the sheet where I cut out the windows and things, and then cutting out the whole window and putting the already printed lintel back into place. And then I could put my sills on and windows behind it. It worked out pretty good. I'm just having fun. I'm an old guy. Don't have anything super great. I just love running dead rail.
Well, it came out really nice, and I like the story that you have behind it.
Yeah. Every building, according to Michael Scott, every building has a story behind it. So I just threw that in because I intentionally.
Another thing about Michael too, I told you it was either last week or the week before that I'm familiar with a lot of his work too. And when he pulled up that stained glass ornamental window in that cathedral,
yes,
and in scale, that was the day that I stopped scratch building for quite a while.
Come on, Doc.
He is absolutely fantastic. And I've got another guy that I've flown model airplanes with for decades now, and he's getting into dead rail. And he has also I think, seriously thinking about trying to do some kind of card and paper building. I've shown him some places where he can buy some things and get started. And I'm helping him install a local-fi dead rail system in a train that he wants to run. He's living in a retirement community, and they have a Model HO Railroad Club there.
Wow.
So he's getting into that. He can't get out to the flying field much anymore. So he said, well, I can make it down to their layout, and I'm going to get me a train to run on it. And he's going to run, he's bound determined to run it dead rail with local-fi.
And so if people want to go back and look at that YouTube channel, it's called Chandwell.
Chandwell.
All right.
It's a place that he made up, and he has a story for every building. He shows you how to use Inkscape. I had never used it before. I learned from him, and he is very entertaining. And there's some, I don't know. He's just the most amazing guy. I've never talked to him or anything, but I watch his stuff, and I'm totally amazed at his ability at that small scale and to produce these buildings that are so awesome. But he's lucky because he's in the UK.
Yeah.
And that means that 90% or more of the buildings are either stone or brick. Which makes it a lot easier if you're using paper, because it's pretty easy to simulate stone or brick for walls. A little bit harder to get a convincing wooden wall, but.
Well, I'm definitely going to go check out his channel.
Oh.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. He makes it really fun too. His girlfriend, I believe it's his girlfriend, is a news broadcaster for Chandwell, the city. And so he films her basically telling all the news that's happening around the city that day, and then it'll cut to the buildings that he builds, and it's really entertaining and fun.
Yeah, it's not just all about how I make this model or how I do this model. It's all there. You can find it. But there's these fun little episodes where they tell you there's this graffiti artist. His name is Scotty, and because was what Michael Scott was called when he was in school. But there's this graffiti artist, and he goes around putting graffiti on a lot of the buildings. So there's always a story behind the graffiti on the building, on a wall, on a viaduct. He is the most amazing guy. I can watch him for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Thank you, Ken. Greg, is there another one up?
All right. Yes. Thanks, Ken. Now, the next one up is Bill Stimson. And Bill, I saw you here earlier. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. We've got 6 slides.
So these are 3 buildings from a E.L. Moore article in Model Railroader, where he built a small engine terminal. And this is the yard office. And you'll notice that I've managed to make a screen door in N scale. And that
not
is
an easy task.
That is a piece of toile ribbon that I found. Somebody recommended it for chain link fence, and I stumbled across it while I was building this building and went, ooh, wonder if that'd make a screen door. Well, there you see the screen door.
Nice.
I painted the wall behind it. I didn't really make a wooden door. I just painted it dark color and then put that screen there and put 2 pieces of strip wood over the top of it to make the door.
That works.
Yeah. And the shingles are a Xerox of an old Walthers shingle sheet from the 80s, if I remember right. I had 4 or 5 of them, and the last sheet before I started cutting it up, I actually scanned it. So I've been printing them out when I need some paper shingles. They look pretty decent for just a piece of paper with shingles drawn on them. The next slide should be the side window. This is scratch built with northeastern board and batten siding, and the rest of it is all scratch built. The chimney came from my supply of white metal castings. So there was a chimney that I thought looked pretty good on this particular building.
Yeah, and I'm working on an N-scale building right now, and I will tell all of you who are not that used to it, this is much bigger than the actual piece. So when you're looking at this sitting on a layout or on a table or something, it's much smaller. So everything looks even sharper and better.
There it is right there.
Yeah.
I thought I used some a dime on some of these. Okay, this is
I think you do.
This is for a different article, but it was in his mentioned in his article on the short line terminal, and this is a hand car shed, and code 55 rail, Alice code 55 rail. And you can see how small that is.
Yeah.
Next slide. There's the dime and the building.
Yeah. So if one of you takes a dime out of your pocket, it's probably about half the size of what you see there, which means the building's half the size of what you see there.
Yes. This is the same board and batten siding. These are tissue windows, if I remember right. And then scratch built doors, and the shingles in this case are from Monroe Model Works, and they're a foam or rubber or something like that. They're not styrene, they're not paper. They kind of squish if you press on them.
Huh.
So
interesting.
And I cut the ties off the rails and just slit the hole under the building. So I purposely left the doors closed because I'm not about to attempt to scratch build a hand car in N scale.
No, that would be asking a lot.
Yes. So this is a ice house that was also mentioned in the article with some pictures, but he referred to another article, or I guess a set of plans in a different issue of Model Railroader, and the plans in that other issue were much easier to scale down to N scale, and he actually turned this building. Those doors, the ice house doors, were actually on the non-gable end in the original article, but in this one I put him like he did on the gable end. And those hinges you see are actually just small slivers of paper.
Wow.
That I then painted, I think it's a plate metal, and that's a piece of thread going up to a small piece of styrene, not tube, but styrene rod that I cut, and then ran the thread through over the top of it and glued it to that beam. And you can see that dime again.
Yeah.
See how small this is. The only thing that's not scratch built is that ladder. I actually had a ladder that was just the perfect size to fit there. And I bought a small box of ladders and stairs at a swap meet a couple of years ago, and I'm still working my way through this bunch of ladders and stairs. Next slide. And there's the side of it, and you can see the scratch built platform and the little piece of styrene that pretending to be a pulley.
Well, that's the nice thing about N scale is you can, I almost call it cheating with some of the details, because you only need something that kind of represents what should be there. For example, your hinges, you know, in N scale, when you're looking at the building, they're going to look like hinges just because they're so small, and that's what you expect to see there.
That's right. They will, and the shingles on this one are the same Monroe Model Works shingles, and the same Northeastern. I mean, I'm just cutting small strips off of that siding. I've got another 6 inches of that 12-inch piece to go, and I've gotten 2 or 3 other buildings out of it.
I was going to say that's a few more buildings there. How did you come across these E.L. Moore articles? I'm wondering.
It's a 1967 Model Railroader article, January '67.
Yeah, I know. I put out a video about him and his influence in a lot of the early IHC and model power kits and stuff, and a lot of the stuff that he did back in the 60s and 70s. But you don't see or hear much about him anymore. That's why I was wondering where you ran across him.
I've got about 3/4 of his articles that I've managed to find and copy and keep in my back pocket. I'm going to attempt. This is the start of the engine terminal. I'm going to attempt to build all of the buildings in the engine terminal, and then build the engine terminal as a small Fremo module. So it'll be interesting that the February issue of 1967 is the engine house itself. And the only thing he didn't make an article about that I can find is the turntable in the engine terminal. Everything else, he had an article about it.
Yeah, he was quite a prolific writer back then.
And usually a story to go with the whole thing. So,
all right, thank you, Bill. Does anybody have any questions about any of these really tiny little buildings?
That's fantastic modeling. And people have to keep in mind what you said, Greg. These are expanded tremendously. And when they're looking at it at end scale, I mean, the detail on this particular one is fantastic, but viewing it on the layout, it's amazing. You know.
Well, thank you, Bill. And Bill, I'm going to try and get a hold of you later. I want to exchange some more information about E.L. Moore.
Sure.
So I'll be in touch.
No
so that's what we have for our MyBuild for this month. The upcoming one is going to be water, and that will be held on June 21st. And as Chris says, anything that has to do with waterfronts, boats, bridges, etc. I have a little pond that I'm probably going to submit. And we will also have the results of the elections. And we're not talking about any political parties here. What we're talking about is choosing categories for next year's MyBuild. And the deadline for submissions for the June MyBuild will be June 18th. And you can send them to Rail Runner. Oh, I forget his address, but I'm sure it's on here, and he'll tell you before then. Now, for the 2025 MyBuild survey link, we have this QR code here, and if you don't have your phone handy, that's okay. I'm sure you can get to it through the website. And it just takes you to a little poll where you can vote for what you want to have for some of the upcoming MyBuild challenges. And I want to thank you for watching, and thank you for all those of you that participated. And next week, your ordinary host should be back.
Hey, Greg, will you put that link in the chat, please?
Yes, I will.
Cool.
Thank you, Greg, for filling in. Really appreciate it. Well, we have one final presentation, which happens to be mine. It was dependent on whether we had the time or not. So
we have time. Oh.
You have a question, Steve? Is that you?
No, I just forgot to mute myself.
Oh. I'm going to do a presentation this evening on applying artificial intelligence, AI, for billboard artwork. This is a billboard that I made this week over the past 2 days. And I use ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT every day. It understands and responds to natural language. So when you sign up for ChatGPT. It's just one of the many AI engines out there. You just ask it questions like you're talking to a person, and it can assist you with writing, translating, creating photographs, etc., etc. It pulls on data from the internet, and it actually learns. It keeps getting smarter and smarter and smarter. That picture there is generated by ChatGPT. I asked it to do a steam locomotive and a coal tower, and that's what it came up with. Pretty amazing. So that's all wonderful, right? But how can we use it for model railroading? Well, I asked ChatGPT to create me a night. This is what I typed into the engine to the create me a 1930 theme billboard art for the Eberwein Coal Company, and it said, there's the answer. It said, I'd be happy to create a 1930s theme billboard art for the Eberwein Coal Company, but first, to capture your vision, could you answer a few questions? So it asked me if there was a slogan or tagline. So I said, fueling industry since 1898. Actually, it was 1864. I don't know why it says 98. Billboard style. It asked the questions. I did the answers. So it came up with these oh, here. So it said slogan or tagline, and it did an example here. Billboard style, it did some examples. Color preference, do you want illustrations, blah, blah, blah. So it asked me all these things, and then I answered the questions. I said, fueling the RB and OG, Rustic, Buff, and Old Gothic Railroad since 1846. 1846 was the year the Pennsylvania Railroad was incorporated, so I just chose something that would have some relevance. I said, give me a billboard style painted on wood, use a muted vintage palette, put a minor silhouette and a coal hopper on there, and do it in a coal town region. So then I answered all these questions in paragraph form. I just put a comma between each one of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it took about 30 seconds, and it generated this all by itself, which I thought was pretty neat. Eberwein Coal Company, except for I wasn't specific enough. It did basically a painting, and I need this to be a flat if I'm going to use it for a billboard. So I then asked it, using the same image, orient flat, no frame, so I can print on a model railroad billboard. And then it came up with this. It changed it, which isn't what I wanted, and I thought, well, there's some issues with this thing. I said, try it again with less coal in that hopper. And then it came up with this version. Eberwein Coal Company put everything on there, but a lopsided coal. So I asked it again. I said, again, with very little coal in the hopper, and it came up with this. I mean, every time it's coming up with different artwork. So I'm getting closer and closer to what I want, but this looks toy-like. So I didn't think that hopper. I liked everything about this one, but the hopper. So I said, again, with very little visible coal in the hopper and no periods in the RB and OG railroad. So it came up with this. Now it went back to doing a billboard on the side of a building, but I'm getting closer. It's a process you just keep refining. So I asked it again. I said, perfect, but using the same image, orient flat, so I can print on a model railroad billboard. And it came up with a crude hopper again. But parts of this I really like. It's too bad you can't tell it exactly what you want. So I said, same with no lettering on the hopper. Came up with that. Then I said, same artwork, add more detail to the hopper and make it look like it was painted on wood. Now we're getting really close. This is the one I used. I tried to get it a little better. the coal's a little high in the hopper, but having gone through all these iterations, I thought, so I said exactly the same with dark red lettering. Well, getting better. I wanted a little color in this thing. Then I said, same with Smoky City in background. Now this would have been fine, except for now that we have it looks like it's a toy hopper. So the guy's really large and the hopper's really small, but the background is excellent. So this is a game you play. So I said, please make everything the same, which it never does, but make the miner smaller and the hopper larger. So then it came up with this, a fairly detailed hopper. It's not really scale, it's too short, but maybe it could be a narrow gauge one. And I said, next time I said, curve the text like earlier images, miner on the left, hopper on the right. Now we're kind of cooking with gas here. This is a very nice billboard, but we have this on here twice, fueling the RB and OG railroad since 1846. They have it down here, but I really like this one. This one, they got the miner faded into here, so it's sort of arty. You've got a Smoky City in the background. I model Pittsburgh and the Southern Indiana, so this went well with Pittsburgh in the 1920s and 30s. I like this curved here. I like the two colors. I would prefer to not have this twice. So I said and it also misspelled Eberwine Coal Company. If we go back, it says Eberwin, W-I-I-I-I-N. So it made a mistake. I said, you misspelled Eberwine Coal Company and have fueling the RB and OG railroad since 1846 twice. Have that only once and do it again. Okay. Now this one, they really came up with some pretty good detail, rivet detail on the hopper, on the trucks. I mean, this one's very usable here. This one's very usable. I think it was dark, but it looks very good. This is a keeper. I'll use this somewhere on the railroad as a billboard. I said, only curve the Eberwine Coal Company text, redo. So it reverted to, it just won't listen. You know, it doesn't, it just keeps creating something entirely fresh. Same but center the RB and OG railroad. So artistically, why did they put fueling the RB and off to the left? It should be centered, you know. It shouldn't be kicked off to the left. Everything's centered but fueling the R&B railroad. So I asked it to center that, and it curved it again on me, and it came up with completely different artwork. So I didn't use any of these ones here. So again, I told it fueling the RB and OG railroad, flat no curve, everything else the same. Not that it listens. So this one's also usable. There's sufficient detail on the hopper. The miner looks, oh, he has an axe. Jeez, I didn't notice that. Okay, well, I guess. Well, anyway, now I'm going to show you the billboard that I placed the artwork on. This was a billboard that I made. I used basically 4x8s here. These are 2x8s. Oops, sorry, wrong one. I made a framework. I super glued these 4x8s onto these 2x8s. Then I sanded them flat. So this thing would be, I sanded both sides so the top and bottom were flush. There weren't high or low pieces on there. Then I began putting the slats on. Instead of using super glue, I used yellow wood glue. Put these are actually 1x8s. I put all these 1x8s on the thing, and then I put some little, these are 2x2s here and here. Then I marked it for the, I'm going to put a platform here. Most billboards have a platform that when you change the sign, you have something to work off of. I test fit it just to make sure it was the right size on the layout. That's the Eberwine coal facility behind the billboard. Then I marked it for the platform. Then with my chopper, I cut, these are 2x8s, approximately 4 feet in length, 1 inch. I glued them with super glue. This is where you support the decking for the walkway. Then I put the walkway on. These are 1x8s. This is where it goes on the railroad. This is the sign that I chose from AI. That's the Len Eberwine's coal tower. That's the Frenchman River Thomas Yorke kit that I did. And that's this. And that's where it's going to go. And it's shaping up to be a pretty interesting scene. Yeah. And there's the finished billboard. AI assist. What do you guys think of that?
What did you
I had to
actually
laugh,
print it on, Tom?
Yeah, I got quite a laugh through the iterations and the changes it made from version to version. But your finished billboard is really neat. How did you control the size of the output?
Oh, I just with my Mac, I just copy the figure. I go Control-Alt-4, copy the image, then I drop it into PowerPoint, make it any size I want.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't doing, you just get the image and then use PowerPoint to resize it.
Yeah, I just drag that. I just literally just drag it into PowerPoint. I don't have to. In fact, I didn't do Control-Alt-4. I just drag the image into PowerPoint. I don't know if you can do that on Windows, but you can do that on a Mac. Yeah.
Tom, you were lucky you only had one misspelling. I was trying to make a set of signs for a couple of my Spooky Town villages, and one of them was going to be Ghost Rider Express because it was a stagecoach line, and it was, the sign was supposed to have a skeleton and a stagecoach. Well, just like you, it kept coming up with different iterations of the graphics for each one. It could never spell the word rider correct. It always had 2 or 3 I's in it. Sometimes Ghost had 3 T's at the end. I had more signs that were spelled wrong than were spelled right. I finally got one I could use, but I was using Windows Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, but it just, even if I put the words I wanted spelled out in quotes or in asterisks, it still spelled them wrong. I don't know why.
I mean, we're so early in the infancy of this. When AI gets going, and we'll all be doomed.
Yeah.
But the very first version it did was perfect, except for it wasn't a flat billboard that I could pull in as artwork. It had everything I wanted, but it was like a.
Now, you can pull that into Photoshop and distort it so it is flat.
Yeah, except for I don't have Photoshop.
Send it to me next time. I do that all the time.
Yeah. So then you saw the humor it just doesn't listen. You make it exactly like this and it just recreates, because I don't know, it must not have a memory. It just creates the image and throws it out there is what's happening. Yeah. But
AI models, you cannot get a repeatable result. Doesn't matter how many times you put exactly the same words in, you will get a different result every single time. We do it more more complicated things in our office for design iterations, and some of the more advanced things we will take a particular part of an image and just have it iterate on that.
Yeah.
And then you can get different sequences of iterations, but you cannot get it to repeat. It will not repeat.
I think that's a glitch in the programming. I think they'll fix that eventually. You know,
it may be, it's, you know, the amount of information that they have to deal with. I mean, it's incredible to me, just within the last year and a half, I guess, the ability to even have something with legible text. You even if you fed it particular text, you wouldn't get legible text. So that's been an improvement for the image generation pieces out of it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I thought I'd anyway show everybody how easy it is to do this and do custom artwork. I mean, I had to screw around with it for a half hour, but you know, it was interesting. It was frustrating that it would sometimes give me very close to what I wanted, but then it misspelled the word. You know, it just, but you know, at the end I got something very usable, very custom, and I'm going to use it again, you know, of course, on the layout to generate custom billboards, you know, just for amusement purposes. So give it a shot.
What was the application again that you used?
I use ChatGPT 4.5. There's a bunch of them out there. I'm going to try Elon Musk has one. I'm going to try his next. Our founder, Jim Kello, he uses one called, I think, Gemini or something.
There's one that's specifically for artwork.
Yeah, that'd be the one to use.
I think it's called, what is it called? Da Vinci, or it's Picasso.
Picasso. There we go. Do you have to cut your ear off to use it, or no?
No, that would. And Tom, I may have missed it. What media did you print that on? Just paper?
Just paper, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, just paper,
Wow.
regular cheapy paper.
Wow.
And then
Beautiful.
just cut it out, Elmer glue on the wood slats and just stick it on, and then I paint it with a dull coat liquid in a bottle form and seal it up. Yeah.
It looks like fun. We should have an art contest and let people generate billboards.
We could do that. That's a MyBuild thing. My AI. My AI billboard contest. Actually, that's a good idea. Coarse, if you're out there.
I'm watching you do that. It looks like fun. I'm going to go try it.
There you go. Well, that's our show for this evening. And we've got the close with Father Ron, and then we've got a caboose that features an Italian steam locomotive coming out of a tunnel going across a bridge. It's quite interesting. So Father Ron.
Master maker of the universe, our scale models imitate your creative spirit, and we learn the genius of your handiwork. Teach us to appreciate all you have made. Amen.
Thank you, Father Ron. And if we could, we'll just go ahead and just run there we go.
Nobody wants to drive through that steam.
There's the first one. Well, thank all the presenters this evening, and thank the audience, the Zoomers and the YouTubers, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Have a good evening.